Today I'm looking at hard drives, specifically damaged hard drives, where we suspect that the board has failed and that we're contemplating data recovery using a replacement board. And for that purpose I've got four broken hard drives to demonstrate what I'm going to talk about. This is an old Fujitsu drive. It's an IDE drive, and it's a little bit of an enigma, and I'm going to put this one over to one side and we'll deal with this one in a separate video. Of the three that are left, this one, the motor spins, is not recognised. In this one the motor is stuck, and this one ticks. So they're all mechanical problems, and I'm going to use them to demonstrate the problems on the changing the boards. This came from a friend of mine, and I used to look after his computer for him, and I kept backup of the data, so that wasn't a problem when that failed. Nor was this one, because it came from a cousin, and I had recently backed up all her data for her, so that wasn't a problem. And this one was mine, and after having two Seagate drives fail, I'd vowed that I'd never buy another Seagate drive, and so I bought a Samsung, and that failed. Bit ironic really. Now let's have a look at the boards. I'm now going to take these boards out, turn them over so that we can look at them and see them in a little bit more detail, and what I'm going to discuss next. For the purposes of recording things, I've got the screws all set up in the pattern in which they came out, because some of the screws on this drive are different size. It's a bit obvious really. These two are for the connector, the rest of them are the same size. And we'll have to remove this. Right. If you manage to find an identical board to swap, you have to remove one component off of the old board and put it onto the new board, and that is an eeprom. And there are two components here that look like eeproms. However, this one's a MOSFET. I can see that the sort of legs of this device are coupled together in typical MOSFET style, so I presume the drain or source or something. This one is the eeprom. Now, I can remove these with the best of them, specifically this package, but I can't solder them back. My soldering is appalling. I'm no good at it, and the tendency is to watch somebody on YouTube do it and think you can. I've watched the masters do it, and I'm in awe of their ability. The guy from Northridge Fix, Alex, he can swap those over in less than a minute, and because time is money, that's what he prefers to do. However, I think it's possible to read the information on there and write it to the eeprom on the new board without ever taking that eeprom off. And that's what I'm going to demonstrate today, and I'm going to demonstrate it on this board and this board. Again, we've got two devices that look like they could be eeproms. Just at a quick glance, this is the eeprom, and I'm also going to demonstrate it on this hard drive too. Again, two devices look like eeproms. At first glance I can't tell which is which because my eyesight's not that good. I think this is the eeprom, but we'll check that. And it's handy to have a nice little high-powered lens to do the job. This is the sort of hand lens that I use. This is ×8 lens here and ×15 there. You can get a 10 or a 20 and a 20, but up to the individual. Demonstration purposes. Now, let's be honest about this. If you're seriously thinking about data recovery, you ought to send your hard drive away to a professional firm to have it done, and it costs an awful lot of money. This is just a bit of fun with a few old hard drives. My opinion is that if you are fiddling about like this with your hard drive, you don't really care about your data. It's just sort of a last ditch attempt, and hopefully you'll learn something en route, and like make sure that you've got a backup copy of everything before your hard drive fails. And that may mean for some people doing a backup every week, month or two, and it's a question of what you're prepared to lose, how often you do it. But we all learn the hard way. Before I get around to reading and writing these eEPROMs, what is actually on them? Well, one is the firmware that drives the hard drive, and there'll also be all the bad sector information as it comes along, and a few other sort of telemetry parameters that will be stored on there. And that's why you have to swap the information of the eEPROM onto the new board. Now, in doing so, I mean, I really don't like Seagate drives. However, if you look on the cover of a Seagate drive, and we'll just do that for one moment, I'll use this drive as an example. On the information on the label, we have a serial number, and if you plug that into the product support on the Seagate website, you will find that it'll tell you what the latest firmware for it is, and this drive has firmware CC38, I think. And I think when I looked at the website, I think the latest firmware was 48 or 49. Now that really does marched on a fair bit for this drive, and presumably they had lots of bugs and problems, and that may be why this drive failed in the first place. That may be of interest to some of you. I don't think this information appears on all hard drives or is available from all hard drive manufacturers, but Seagate may be the exception to the rule. I did think about updating the firmware on one of these hard drives, not these because they're broken, but a working hard drive, and if I find one of my Seagate drives that is working, and might try it out on that for a bit of fun. Might even make a video of it. Right, enough said. Let's get over to reading and writing eEPROMs, which this is really the topic of the video. Now, while I've got this board out and I'm playing around with it, I thought it was best to put the screws back into these little locations where they come from, and that way we don't lose them. Something I tend to do quite a lot, lose screws. Done the same with the other one. Let's get on with the rest of the video. We're going to use the CH341A SPI mini programmer and a cable and a clip to read and write the eEPROMs on the board. These are the three eEPROMs I identified. The 25P05VF came from the small Seagate drive. The 25X40ALS32 came from the large Seagate drive, and the 25X40 BLN came from the Samsung drive. Now we need to find a piece of software that's going to sort of identify and read these chips and drive our eEPROM programmer. We need the software I'm using is called FlashROM, and just typing in FlashROM and hitting return will bring up a little list of programmers that it supports, and CH341A is there amongst them. Let's clear the screen again. If you need a little bit of help with FlashROM, there is a help menu. And here you have all the bits and pieces, or I should say all the instructions to use FlashROM. Now I want to identify whether it supports the chips that we've found, and the command for that is here, which is the dash L, this one, print supported devices. So, flasher on, dash capital L. And that's a terrific long list. It's gone past far too quickly for us to identify anything, but we'll use the search option, find, and we'll come here and 25P05, it's our first one, and it's picked up on the case here. Now there's the 25P05-A. It says it can probe, write, read, erase and write that chip. There's how big it is, and there's the type of programming it is, so all's well there. But it doesn't give the extension VF. We don't know what the manufacturer is, so are there any others on the list that we can find? Above it is the M25P05, and there's no suggestion that we can probe, read, erase or write, so we don't know. Is there any more? Well, we can use the up and down keys on the to find any more. And here we have another manufacturer, and again there's no information as to whether we can probe, read, erase or write, so that could be a problematical chip for us. What about the other chips? There was the 25X40, and we'll find that. And yes, we've identified it. There's the Wimbond, which it is, and 25X40. There's no extensions after the 40, so I expect the whole range is covered. Probe, read, erase and write. It's 512 SPI. So I'm not expecting any problems with that one. And here I've got to pause it because somebody's just come back from shopping and they're going to make a noise. Rather than go through the agony of dragging you through all the procedure for reading the chips, we'll go straight to the results. For that I have to change my directory. Alright. Now here there's 6 files in this directory, and these are the results. The A1, A2, A3 refer to the small Seagate drive. The B1, B2 and B3 refer to the large Seagate drive. Now I haven't tackled the Samsung drive because I run into a lot of problems. I have 3 results for each drive because I like to read the information on the chip 3 times to ensure that I've got a good copy. The way I check is to create a checksum for each file, and we'll start with the A files first. I'm going to use md5sum sga1.in sga2.in sga3.in. Have we finished coughing? Here are the checksum for each one. That's the one, next one, and the next one. As you can see, they're all different, and that means I haven't got a good copy for the small Seagate drive. Let's repeat that for the large Seagate drive. I'll just modify the text I've got here rather than typing it all out again. This time you can see that the checksums for each file are identical, meaning that I've got a good copy for each of those. It would be easy to think that we couldn't read this drive because it isn't supported by the software of the eeprom programmer. That isn't supported by Flash ROM. This is not the case, and we're now going to take a look at the reasons why I failed. The reason I failed to achieve my goals was down to one thing and one thing only: this clip. And we'll take a closer look at it. Using one of these introduces 32 points of failure. Firstly, there's the 8 pins of that part of the connector. There's the way the insulation displacement connector couples to the cable. But in general, this end is proved fairly reliable. So that's 16 of the 32 points of failure dealt with. The 8 points at where the connector clips on have proved to be really troublesome in, firstly, the connector remaining in place by itself. I never managed to clip onto any of the chips and without holding the connector in place. And during the exercise I had 4 failures of the where the cable has been soldered and connected to the pins of the connector. And they didn't all occur at once, they occurred one at a time. Which was very, very frustrating. When you try to sort of check the continuity of these things, you switch on your meter, you're all fingers and thumbs. How do you hold it all? It sort of drives you nuts. Now, some time ago I made a small little breakout box thing for my CH3418A. It's pretty useless and got very limited use, but I did have 8 pins of this connector block spare, so I strapped them all together, run them out onto one lead so that I could just plug this in and then clip onto there, and then test the continuity of this connector quite simply just by buzz them out like so. That side's okay. And even then you can't guarantee that your cable is not an intermittent disconnection in here, and it is very, very frustrating. So where does that leave me? It leaves me with this eeprom here, which is the 25P05. I'd like to see if it's programmable or not, because doesn't appear to be supported by the software that I'm using. However, I think it probably is. I've got no option other than to desolder this and resolder it. Now, my soldering skills are appalling, and I'll take this off and we'll take it from there, see what happens. I've got an option of putting this into a small discrete connector designed for taking ICs, and then plugging it into the CH3418A, or alternatively soldering it onto sort of a little piggyback board so that I know I've got all good connections, and putting that into the CH341A. Now, before I do that, I'd like to discuss a few things about these boards, and why I am adamant about trying to do things in situ without removing the ICs from the boards. When these boards are first manufactured, they're all assembled under ideal conditions, including the soldering. They're not designed to be taken apart again or de-soldered, etc. Yet we tend to de-solder the eeproms, resolder them onto a small piggyback board for programming, de-solder it again, and then resolder it back onto a PCB. Now that's 4 soldering cycles, well, heat at soldering temperatures that it goes through. And that's not going to do it any good. It was never designed to do that in the first place. The potential for damage, there's potential for damaging the PCB, PCB tracks, any sort of plastic that's on the PCB, all those sort of things are being open to damage. Now the guys that do all this work, they've had years of experience, and they know how to handle the heat to so that it doesn't damage what they're doing. And even then they have their sort of minor accidents. We, as likes of me for argument's sake, do it only once in a blue moon, and therefore I don't have the practical experience of the day-to-day job, and likelihood of me damaging this is fairly high. For me, all this is a learning process, and I'm just trying to improve my skills. Here's a prime example of what goes wrong when you lack experience. I've got the eeprom off. However, I managed to lose a small component that went right across there. That came off. It's just like a small little resistor similar to that one there. It went between there and there. I think it might have also lifted a bit of track or something. I'm not sure, but one does really need a microscope for this sort of job. Otherwise you're going to just end up doing damage like this all day long. Now, fortunately, this is just a junk board. I've not lost anything. I've gained a bit of experience, and we're going to continue gaining experience by trying to reprogram this eeprom, which is the 25P05. Here I'm using a connector for the eeprom, and we'll see whether that works. Failing that, I'll have to solder the eeprom onto one of these little piggyback boards. This just plugs into the mini programmer like so, and if we're lucky it's going to work. If not, we'll come back and solder it onto this thing. I've mounted the chip on the CH341A mini programmer, and now we're going to read it using flash ROM. Dash programmer CH341A underscore SPI, and we're going to read it to a file that we're going to call read. The file name's going to be clip1.bin. Let's go for it. As you can see, we've had a successful read. I'd like to explain that this little bit here, that the flash ROM has detected the M25P05-A. It gets that information off of the chip itself. Every eeprom has its identification built into its memory, and flash ROM sends a code to the eeprom and says, what type of chip are you? and it comes back and it says I'm this chip. Flash ROM then looks up a list, and from that list it selects the chip from that list. It's not necessarily the same chip, but that's the one it identifies it as, basically on its capacity, and has very little meaning as to its sort of performance figures, like how quick it will write, erase or read, because the flash ROM does it at a slower rate that covers all of the different variants for that capacity of chip. And when I talk about variants, I talk about the extensions that come after the 25P05. You see lots of different chips have different sort of extensions, so don't get carried away by all of that. Right, we've read it once. I'm now going to read it again because, as I said, I like to read it 3 times. I'll just change the file name. That's it. We'll read again. We've had another successful read, and one more time. This time I'm going to call it clip3.bin, and we've had another successful read. Now we're going to go and check all of this by creating the checksum for each of those files. I'll clear the screen first. Now, from previous work, paste, this was the chip when it was on the board, the SGA1, SGA2 and SGA3 bins, and they were the ones that gave me the 3 bad checksums. Now we're going to add clip 1.bin, clip, oh dear, my time is terrible, clip 2.bin, and finally clip 3.bin. Now they're all binary files, that's what the bin stands for. Here we go and see what we come up with. Now let's look at the clip ones first. This is this group, and as you can see that all the reads are identical, so I'm happy that I've got a valid copy of the data that's on the chip. Here, of the first 3 results that I did when the chip was on the circuit board, this one matches. So I did effectively have 1 good read out of 3, which isn't really the way to go about it. But now I'm quite happy that I've got 3 that all say the same. At this stage, perhaps you might like to see what's actually on the chip. We'll go ghex clip 1.bin. Now this is the data that's on the chip, and over here is the alphanumerics, and over here is the hexadecimal code, and you can see parts of it pop up as plain language, and it's all a bit meaningless, but perhaps you see little things that pop up that make you inspire you that you've actually got something that's proper. I'm just having a little look down and seeing all these things. It's all meaningless to me. However, let's go through it and look. These are the sort of things that you need to look at if you need to change the data anywhere on something that you actually know about. We're not going to change any data here because I know nothing about it. Right, close that down. Just put that up there out of interest. Now I've got a good copy. The question is, can I erase that chip? I wonder. So let's try finding out how to erase the chip. As I said before, Flash-ROM has a help menu, help. We're going to find out what the operands are for the erase sequence, and it's just -E, capital E or -- erase. So let's go back, clear screen, come down here a bit so get text in the middle of the screen, go to Flash-ROM, -- programmer, CH341A_SPI, and we'll go the capital root this time, -erase. Was it erase? Or was it? Oh, it was capital E, wasn't it? Capital E. That's all. And that should erase the chip. Erasing and writing flash chip, erase, write, done. Right. Now let's go back and read that chip this time. So we'll go -- read, and we'll call this clip4 for .bin. All this is to prove that we have actually erased the eeprom. Read it, done, and we'll go GX, clip4.bin. This is just by means of demonstration. As you can see, we've filled it with F's, and hopefully it's all blank now, so we can erase that chip. Next test, let me clear the screen again. Yeah, come down a bit. Flash-ROM. We want to write to this chip this time, WRITE, and we'll call it write, and we want to write clip1.bin. This clip1.bin, we have to select the file we want to write to the chip, and clip1.bin is the one we want to write to the chip. Let me do that. I think everything is ready to go. Yep. And this time we've actually written it, verified the flash, and verified. So what we've done is proved that we can read, erase and write that chip using Flash-ROM. I do this sort of thing for fun, and before I move on, I'd like to make a few comments about hard drive data recovery. One, it's never been a problem to me, and that is because I make sure that I have a backup of all my important data, and if a hard drive goes wrong, I just buy a new one and recover my data from my backups and carry on where I left off. Yes, I lose operating systems. Yes, I sometimes lose data that I would prefer not to lose, but I don't lose data that's really important to me. If your hard drive has a mechanical problem, there's going to be very little chance of recovering from that situation. If it has a board problem, then there's a chance that you may be able to swap the board out and get it working to recover your data. Now, of the 4 drives that I've had on the table, only one of them has got a board fault, and it's this one, and it's the IDE drive, and I'll deal with this in a later video. As I've said before, when you change the boards, you need to swap over the eeprom, and I prefer to swap the data on the eeprom using a connector, so that it can all be done in situ. And I failed miserably because of this device. It's the connector that's the problem. They are complete rubbish. What we need is a better connector, and I might even try to make one that will do the job for me. I'm absolutely convinced it's possible to read and write the data leaving the eeproms in situ. I'd rather do it that way than sort of de-solder and resolder the components, possibly damage the boards in the process of doing it. One really needs a microscope to help with the soldering process because the components are so small, and it's not obvious using the naked eye or even a sort of small magnifying glass that you not damage some of the surrounding components.